does the way that parents or carers, the way that they're interacting with their children, does that affect, I suppose, their language development? And absolutely, yes, it does. I would kind of often talk to parents about, the sponge analogy. So a child, for anything, is like a sponge. So they are in an environment and they are hearing things all of the time. So the more they are hearing, obviously, the more they're soaking up. And like a sponge filling with water, eventually the sponge is going to go the other way and it's going to come out. So receptively, they have to learn and understand what's going on in their environment before they're going to have that expressive part. So that's why, in the first year of life, you'll see that, children aren't saying a whole lot, but they're taking a lot in. So if a child is in an environment where they're hearing lots of language and they're hearing lots of talking and, you see it like moms or dads out and about and they're going, there's the car and there's the plane, and you think the child is just sitting there looking and nodding, but really they are taking all of that in. Yeah. And eventually when it all, is soaked in, it does expressively, then they start to maybe imitate or try to copy what mom or dad are saying. So in that sense, we would do a lot of work about really empowering parents about like the impact that they can make in terms of their language development, even from very early on. And I would work from parents with babies from as young as 3 months, and talking about the importance of things like, taking turns or copying or imitating their sounds, even from babbling stage, and the importance of that for children, because when we are copying, let's say, like babies and their sounds, that is kind of affirming to the baby that we're listening and that there's an interaction and it's a two-way thing. So the research has shown, I suppose, about greater language exposure. So children that are exposed to more language, that they would have more, it promotes appropriate social interaction with their peers. We have greater kind of vocabulary size by the time that they're 3. Things like, readiness for school. Those children that have greater language exposure early on are ready for school quicker or sooner. And as well, obviously, it's a great predictor of reading and like language skills like later on. Yeah. So in relation to that, and again, just coming back to parents and the sponge, and I'd always be talking about things like the running commentary of life. So when parents will come to me in the clinic, a lot of the time, some people it's not like they don't decide to do this, but they don't really talk to their children. So they're with their children and they're going about their daily lives and they're going through their routines. But I would talk about this idea of the running commentary of life. So if you're doing it, we're talking about doing it. Okay. So if you're opening the door, we're opening the door. If we're in Aldi and we're putting a banana in the trolley, we're putting it in the trolley. And sometimes I say to parents, you feel a bit mad. You're walking around Aldi like a lunatic on your own, and you're having a full-blown conversation with like a 6-month-old in the trolley, or like a 2-year-old in the trolley, and you're getting nothing back, and everyone's going, who's the crazy lady talking to the trolley? But at the same time, that's so important, because people will say, about television and it's great, and Dora's taught them 1 to 4 in Spanish and it's fantastic, and I'm going, yeah, that's great, but do you not think that a child would learn a whole lot more from you if you were in the kitchen doing the wash up and you were saying what you were doing, and they were hearing verbs and they were hearing nouns and they were actually experiencing that in real life, versus seeing it on a pixelated box that's not in any way relevant to what's happening there and then. So for, I suppose, my role, the first part when a child arrives to the clinic is the assessment piece. So if a child has been referred to speech and language therapy, generally there is a concern that maybe they're a little bit delayed or something's not kind of right, and parents come with, I suppose, different expectations about what speech and language therapy is. Some people don't really want to be there, don't know why they are there. I think a lot of the time think that they're coming to do their P's and their B's, and or that the child has a stammer, and don't understand that whole language part of it, like speech and language therapist. And the language part of it for the under 3s is our main focus. We're not concerned about really pronunciation until they're 3 or over. So the main part would be kind of to do an assessment, and I suppose is to ascertain in terms of their peers where they're at. I mean, are they kind of are in the average range? Are they a little bit behind? Are they delayed? Are they severely delayed? And then giving parents a little bit of feedback on that. And to be honest, the most of the time the children that are coming are the kind of, they're the under 3s or they're 2.5 and they're not really saying much, but mom and dad will be kind of going, they understand everything now, they'd be fine with that, but they're not saying anything at all. And we would do therapy wise then, obviously for under 3, we don't do a lot of direct therapy with the children, because it's a bit like what I'm saying about the running commentary of life or the sponge analogy. It's a drop in the ocean for a 2.5-year-old to come and see me for 10 minutes, or half an hour in a week. It's not enough. And the whole thing is empowering the parents and kind of getting them to use strategies and ideas at home that are going to be used all of the time, kind of in everyday routines, because that's going to be what's going to have the greatest impact. So the evidence now is really supporting that, which is great, because it makes it a lot easier to rationalise to parents. I think a lot of the time parents want a very prescriptive, sure, I'll just bring him up now to you on a Wednesday and you'll see him for half an hour and he'll be sorted. And that's not really, we're trying to move away from that mindset and really empower parents in that what they could be doing. So we're doing we run programs basically kind of like SLT led, so like I'd be SLT, sorry, speech language therapist, sorry. So like speech therapy, the speech therapist will kind of lead it, and then like running or facilitating a parent group and working on strategies, strategies and different things that parents could be doing at home to support language development. And then what we would usually do is kind of do some video and coaching work with parents kind of with their own child and giving them feedback and pointers and things like, oh, that was really good the way you used that there, did you see what happened, like how Johnny responded when you tried that, and just trying to...
Is that in the clinic? Or
in the clinic,
homes?
It's clinic based, just for recording and things like that. So generally it will be as a group, and so they might have 2 sessions as a group kind of going through some of the strategies, and then we might have 1 session where mom comes back, or mom and dad or dad comes back with the child, and we might do a video session and then kind of go back. And sometimes video, like parents cringe at video and they kind of go, no, I'm grand. But to be honest, it's a very powerful tool, and sometimes it's not till you watch yourself back that you realise the kind of things that you do. A lot of the time, I suppose, from schools or from preschools, they'll have children that are not talking at all in English, but are doing quite well in their own language, and often they're referred to speech and language therapy because they're not speaking English. But I suppose the message, and it's good that you asked actually, because it's good that everybody is again singing off the same hymn sheet on that, is the recommendation around multilingualism or children speaking 2 or 3 languages or 2 or more, is that the parents should be speaking in their first language to the child only. So that's a really important message actually, even to take away from today, because there is a lot of kind of confusion around it, and sometimes school is saying one thing and then speech and language therapy is saying another, and it can be a bit confusing for parents. And the reason we say that, and it's coming back to the whole language acquisition part again, is for children to learn a language, they have to learn all the rules and they have to learn all the structures. So if I have not very good, let's say if I don't have very good English and I'm speaking in kind of pidgin English and I'm not really marking the S's, or I'm not really able to put the sentence with the words in the right order, then I'm modelling that for my child. So then they're not learning the rules of how to make a sentence properly. They're learning them kind of haphazardly. So what we say is it's always really good for parents to speak in their own language at home and not to worry too much about the English, because it'll come, it'll come in the preschool setting, or it'll come in school. And I think it's the sponge. So I think that's hard for schools then as well, though, on the other hand, because then you have these children that are coming speaking fluent Polish and have no English, and they're arriving to preschool and school settings. But that is best practice guidelines, and at the end of the day, if they're learning it in that way, in that if they're learning the first language, it's going to be a lot easier for them to actually learn the English, versus kind of half learning English and half learning Polish and actually not knowing the rules or structures in either language. A lot of the time it's a lot of kind of guidance, I suppose, and we'd have teachers all of the time asking, like, am I doing the right thing, or like, am I giving the parents the right recommendation? And I suppose we really, in speech and language therapy, shouldn't be seeing the children that don't have difficulties. So for example, if a child is in their junior infants and they did 1 year of preschool and they've arrived into junior infants and they're not very good at English, but really you can tell in Polish that they're yapping away with another little Polish lad in the class, and that mom and dad say, no, I'm not concerned about Polish at all. I'm just giving the example of Polish. But then that's not really a child that's appropriate for speech and language therapy, because they don't actually have a language difficulty. They're just learning a second language, and it's taking them a little bit of time. So in relation to that, in terms of like proficiency in a language, like a second language, we would say 4 years of formal education. So it's just a good marker sometimes to know, so if a child has been, we kind of say 3 years conversational, 4 years then for full kind of like educational tasks that are kind of like language-based reading, writing, kind of 4 years. They need the full 4 years in a formal educational setting, be it like a preschool, like maybe 2 preschool years, and then maybe by first class if we notice that the English is still something that they're really struggling with and they're not getting a handle on, absolutely refer them to speech and language therapy, but not when they've had 1.5 years exposure to a language that's not their first language. You know what I mean? And as well, parents will come to you and they will say, oh no, we're speaking a bit of English, and generally I would advise kind of the parents against it, or kind of say, well, like, why are you doing that? And they will say things like, oh, I want him to speak English.
Sure,
But
you
you see, it
understand
doesn't, you can understand the motivation behind
yeah.
it, but you have to kind of get into what I've said there and explain kind of the I suppose the rationale for why we would encourage them to speak their first language.